Welcome to episode 6 of season 4 of Whole Lot of Wolves. We're your hosts. I'm Joshua Buckley.
I'm Paul LePage.
And our great producer from New York City, Mr. Alex Patakis, who may be under the weather, but that's not going to keep him out of the squad.
Battling through. This is my flu game.
This is your flu game? Don't sound that bad. I was expecting like something like really horrible. It's a dignified voice today.
Okay. I'll take it.
You'll take it. Paul, what was not dignified was the second half of the Wolves game on Saturday. You know, we wake up early in the morning, they go up 1-0, and it's like, wow, I'm actually glad I woke up early. This could be special. And then the second half started. Just a disaster all around in that second half. What specifically did you see go wrong?
You can point to a lot which individually you probably could have accounted for, but collectively it led to the trouble that we found ourselves in. I think where we went wrong, actually not from the second half onwards, bring it back to the first half, is that we didn't go in there with more than a 1-goal lead. Because to me, if we'd have gone in at 2-0, it would have had exactly the same parallels as the 3-0 victory that we had last season. I could well have seen us closing it out in the second half and maybe snatching another one late on and really putting a good performance together. So,
Paul, that one was only 2-0, remember? Because Klopp said that last goal didn't count.
Oh, yeah. So that 2-0 victory. So that factors into it, and you're going to point there to what went wrong with Cunha's finishing, in that he buried a chance against Palace when it didn't matter, effectively. But when one's handed to him on a plate, which was much easier on Saturday, he gets it all wrong. And just watching back the highlights, if that goal had gone in, and if that goal had been scored by anyone in the top 4, top 6, everyone would have been talking about it. The crossfield ball, Neto skill, perfectly measured cross right onto the top of his head, bang, goal. What a fantastic move, what fantastic football. Yeah, it breaks down and it just looks horrible, and he gets cascaded. But I thought, in particular, I thought he did a pretty decent job as that lone forward, or that false 9, and that's elements where it certainly went to go wrong in the second half, in that he was unable to maintain that role. So there was no out ball in the second half. I don't think Fabio was able to trap a ball, let alone pass it to a teammate in order to even build something from the final third. And that was the incremental things that started to go wrong in the second half. The bringing Doherty on, I could see why they did it, but I was really unsure of what position or not he was taking up, and that minimized an outlet as well. And if you're going to go down that route on the right hand side, at least have Semedo as a more forward advanced player that can maybe beat a man, or he's got that ball that's more comfortable to his feet. I didn't get that understanding. Down the right hand side, I thought Boubacar Traore totally got bypassed when it came to needing that midfield engine room to come on and make a difference. And again, if you come back to that previous game last season, that game was won just as much in the second half because he was able to bring Lamina on, who was fantastic. So it's really those incremental pieces that when you add it up all together, it really made for bad watching. And I think some shade got thrown at O'Neill about not recognising what Klopp had changed in the second half. But again, you got to realise that he's coming up coaching against Klopp, who's vast experience, possibly one of the elite coaches in Europe, regardless of your taste of the man as an individual, possibly next German coach or whatever. So that factors into it as well. And at the end of the day, is it a game where was it expected us to win? No. Did it look positive in the first half, at least, that we may get a point out of it? Yeah, it was. So that's disappointing. But really, I think it comes down to O'Neill's got to win his battles coaching wise against those teams that we're going to be in and around. Anything out yesterday would have been a bonus. But it just shines a light potentially that makes the Crystal Palace result look a little worse now in hindsight, and it's all of a sudden it's made Saturday's trip to Luton look massive now.
Absolutely. I think we do need to recognize, and I need to apologize to one Pedro Neto, who has been outstanding. And Alex, it happened when they actually, moved him to the correct side. Last 2 games been phenomenal, which I'm sure means we'll have to start listening to rumors about him leaving in January, Paul. Is it just a matter of flipping Neto to his correct side?
I think there's a little more that goes with it, because part of the things that didn't work in the second half, that he was largely anonymous, like man of the match by a huge distance in the first half, but second half but barely threatened. Similar could be said about Wang as well, that he scored, maybe a trap back, but it's like he didn't have any other chances created for him to put away. He didn't do much individually. So if you've got those players that are suddenly hitting the heights, but then they're drastically falling off a cliff and not contributing, then you're going to suffer. And it's got to be looked at about how the bench can step up and fill in, or how other players within the team can do that. If that's even trying to park the bus and rely on the defence. I think up till their equaliser going in, it wasn't bad. They looked pretty solid. There was a few last gasp blocks and what have you, but nothing like you wouldn't expect against Liverpool. But as soon as that goal went in, heads down, no terms of rallying or corralling the team, and there was just that horrible sense of you knew what was coming in the bottom of your stomach, and it just seemed like to permeate the body language, and it was a matter of when, if not if, they would have taken the lead. So it's a tricky one to process and get your head around for sure.
I think the real damning was that second goal, Paul, where Saw just inexplicably kicked it to no one, and then they were able to counter really quick. I think that's why we as fans get a little frustrated with Saw, because he has games like he did the previous week against Crystal Palace where he's tremendous, or not Crystal Palace, but he's had tremendous games here earlier this year, and then he does stuff like that, and it just boggles your mind. Do you think he can be the long-term answer?
I don't think long term, but unfortunately, I think he's the best of a potentially bad bunch, which doesn't fill you with a lot of confidence. Even if you think about it, he's maybe on the verge of that Portuguese squad. Like every now and again, he'll get that call up and he'll be the third choice. Whereas we're looking at the guy on the bench who we got from Bristol City for a nominal amount. He's nowhere near the England squad. So it's kind of what we're stuck with. And maybe that was something to do with O'Neill's comments in the post-match press conference, was some of them play with a little too much flexibility. They're left to their own devices a little more, where if Sarr may have been better instructed just to hold on to that and reset and
Mhm.
just take up a few seconds. But then the flip side you've got is oftentimes you get that clamour that he gets the ball and there's the opportunity to hit him on a quick counter attack and aiming for Neto. He could have pinged a ball like he did to Raul the other season, who went down the other end away at Southampton and put it away. So sometimes in that situation, you're caught between the devil and the deep blue sea. But I think if there was a game where you really needed to claim that ball, just hold on to it, reset, and take it from there. That was it on that particular move. But it just does seem like there's that rick in him every week. At one point, he might pull off a worldie, but then you're still a little nervous if he's coming for that ball. And he flapped at one in the first half that caused a panic and got cleared away eventually. But he's always got it in him, I'm afraid.
So the lineup would look to be 4-3-3 with Bellegarde slotting in as that attacking midfielder. Did you like the lineup? And obviously his performance was spectacular.
I did. I liked the lineup. I thought it was sensible given the opponent, even though we're at home. I think he's going to be our flair player. He did as much in 45 minutes, 60 minutes as we've seen in a debut, you know. That drive to take the ball from the midfield, the close control, getting in and around the box. It's seen that everything that we're looking for has been answered with him, and it's just a matter of getting the best out of him and finding his ideal position along with the others to get that ideal unit. And it it could be, we it could be that we're blowing this result all out of proportion. It could be that we put a similar team out against Luton next week and absolutely smash them, but that's definitely not in the Wolves' way. So you've always got that horrible feeling of you can't get too excited by these things. But there was a ton of positives just from him as well. So take those, move it forward, build his match fitness up, because that's going to be a huge adjustment coming in at the start of the season with games being played and having to catch up with the speed and the dynamism and the fitness level that you need in the EPL. So the quicker he can do that, I think the better.
You mentioned fitness, which I think is good because that's one of the criticisms right now with O'Neill's coaching styles. He wants that high press and he does it all throughout the games, which is leading to, successful first halves. But do you think this team, with how, it's not deep at all. Do you think that that's a good strategy that can lead to enough results, Paul?
Again, I think so, but what worries me is that that's got obviously you got to continue that for as much as the 90 minutes as possible, and that's only going to build up over time, and that comes down to him what in part his style on the team after only joining the club a week before the season kicks off. So I think there's a balance to be struck. My only worry is, and again it's early days, but my only worry is when it comes to this is that it may be that that's his only game plan. And that's what worries me, that he might not have a plan B or a plan C when push comes to shove and he has to make a tactical change, either offensively or defensively, to try and get something from a game. Can he look to the shape, the formation, the style of play, the players on his bench? Has he got enough experience wise in order to be able to do that? And that's no one really knows because he's got such a small body of work, even last season with Bournemouth, to judge that upon. So I think yesterday in particular, the thinking behind it and the changes were probably the right ones. It just happened to be that the likes of Silva and Boubacar were just passengers, and you immediately suffered because they weren't able to impart anything on the game whatsoever.
With Fabio, do you think, obviously, the Wolves are going to try and go after another striker in January? I think Big Sassy's sticking around. Cunha's obviously sticking around. Do you think Fabio is a potential to go back out on loan in January if Wolves do bring in a number striker?
It's a tricky. I think you still need you still need those two strikers on the bench. So possibly, I think he could, but if that happens, I think the writing's on the wall for his eventual departure permanently. Because yeah, you can go to Belgium, you can go to Holland and score and be put in decent teams and look pretty good, but it's a whole different kettle of fish in the Premier League, and he looked like a little boy lost at times yesterday. And again, I think it is a case that he's got to find out the best formation that works for individual players to become a team. And yesterday, it was wholly obvious that Fabio can't be that guy in that sole number 9 lone forward role. Now, can he be that guy with a different type of striker alongside him, like Sasa, or could he be the one that drops deep and there's another attacker who plays off the shoulder of the last defender, and he has more of a free role and can be a quasi number 10, maybe. But I think it's just the whole issue at the moment is he's got to find a team, he's got to find a shape, and he's got to find the players that go into it.
Are Wolves pretty much like stuck with O'Neill for the rest of this year?
Again, like a win on Saturday and everything's okay,
Right.
for what's gone on up until this point. A loss on Saturday, I think, is gonna raise some really loud alarm bells. A loss away at Ipswich to a team in a lower league in the Carabao Cup again the following week is going to raise some more as well. So it is a pretty massive week. We like to think that they've made the smartest choice with the options that they had available in his appointment, and I'm crossing everything that's the case, and we take the rough with the smooth given the situation that he's come into, and that he picks up the wins where he needs to, and the losses happen because they will, because it's a new management team, new players, and all of that. So will he be facing some pressure? I think when it comes to these games against teams in and around us that on paper, even at the moment, look like must wins, then that's going to be the measure of his success this season and how long he ultimately lasts.
I mean, Wolves have not been done any favors with this schedule to start off. And I realize it's the Premier League, but Man United, Brighton, Liverpool, I mean, and Man City's coming up here real soon. It's kind of like, man, I mean, that's tough. The good news is you're getting a lot of these out of the way early.
Yeah, the flip side of it is I should have made a note of the stat when it was shared yesterday, but haven't we conceded like something like more in these first home games than we did in all of those under Lopetegui at home last season? So there's those elements that factor into it as well. So you've got to play these teams at some point. Is it good to get it out the way potentially? And again, it is so early in the season that they picked up that win away. The win away at Everton was a good one considering the teams around us. I still think we should have come away from Palace with a better result, and again better performance second half. My only real worry is that from effectively what is the same defensive unit, same shape to the team, the difference between that defensive solidity from last season to this is like night and day. And we can't go on conceding as many that we do in, regardless of opponent, because that's going to ultimately catch up and cost you. And it could be as simple as having that third goal go in yesterday off a deflection that stacks up and turns into goal difference at the end of the year, which could effectively be a point. It's these fine margins that we could be battling for. So I want to see some defensive solidity to come back to give me some confidence that we can do at least okay and be managing this season without getting into a relegation scrap.
Okay, so I guess final thoughts on this one. Any positives? What positives do you take away from the game?
Positives again, regardless of the chance and everything. I like the flashes that I saw from Cunha. Again, it gave me some of the highlights from when he played that role against Man United as well, that if he can drop deep, pick up the ball, run at players, we looked good on those occasions yesterday. So again, him, Neto, Bellegarde, it's those that if it can all come together and click, we could turn into a side and look pretty good and string some good results together. So the positives I'm taking is there were some green shoots from certain aspects that you just hoping are nurtured in the right way and they begin to grow.
Yeah, how about you, Alex?
I just wanted to add, because I know Paul said it in I don't know, one of the many group messaging things that we're on now, text, Twitter, X, everything.
Yeah.
But just because we haven't said his name, the other positive that Paul pointed out is João Gomez. And I mean, Neto is definitely man of the match for the first half if you had to pick one on the losing side, but João Gomez was
he was a monster.
he was incredible. And I would just say that my one takeaway is that even though Liverpool invested heavily in their midfield after we absolutely bullied them last season in that area of the pitch, I think we still won that battle for the most part, at least for 45 to 60 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And Bellegarde brings a balance that they haven't had. So like that guy because he's not just solely like Nunes was kind of like playing out on the wing at some point times in a 4-4-2. Like Bellegarde seems like more of a true attacking mid who can push forward when needed. And with Lamina and Gomez behind him, theoretically, that should work. Like
I love the midfield. Yeah, I love our midfield.
So I just wanted to add that because Gomez was incredible against, I mean, he basically is the reason Alexis McAllister got subbed off so early, because he just could not play with him.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think our midfield is top notch. I wouldn't want to replace either of the three guys that started yesterday. And, just again comes down to scoring goals. Come on, Cunha. You can do better than that.
Whole Lotta Wolves is self-funded, so if you're interested in sponsorship opportunities as a way to reach a niche audience, email hello@wholelottawolves.com for our sponsor packages. Just want to make a contribution as a listener who enjoys the show? Then head to buymeacoffee.com/WLWpod. That's buymeacoffee.com/WLWpod. We greatly appreciate any contribution. Up the Wolves.
All right, so now we are delighted to be joined by some special guests this week. We have Johnny Phillips and Paul Berry, authors of Revolution of Wolves, a Premier League Trilogy, which chronicles 3 different promotions during the 2003 through 2023 under 3 different owners and 3 different managers. Paul, you remember these times well.
I sure
How
do.
you doing, guys?
All good, thanks, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing great, doing great. And Johnny, how are you doing?
Yeah, very good. Thanks, Josh.
We really appreciate you guys taking the time to join us here in our little North American podcast. But, you know, kind of what we pride ourselves on is that we welcome a lot of younger Wolves fans in to kind of teach them about the game and about the club. So some of them may not know you guys as much. They may know you through social media, but may not know your backgrounds and how you connect with the club. So Johnny, I'll let you go first. Kind of tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, similarly to Paul, I work in the football industry on the media side for Sky Sports in England, which I guess is probably similar to NBC. Is it? Who covers the football for you now?
Yeah,
is it
NBC.
NBC? So covering a whole range of football from Premier League down to the lower leagues. And I've worked with Sky for many years. And the last Wolves game I did for them was the opening one of the season away at Manchester United on the Monday night. So I get to cover Wolves quite a bit through that line of work. And also I write for the local paper, the Express and Star. I do a football column every weekend. And I've known Paul for well over a decade, since his days working for the club. And we've struck up a good friendship as well as becoming colleagues over this project.
Awesome. And Paul, kind of talk about your background.
So I guess been involved with the media probably for 20, 25 years, but I guess probably where Johnny's more sort of, obviously he's got that focus on Wolves, but he's more been the national, right at the heart of it all. I've probably always been more, I guess, locally based. So for about 7 or 8 years, I worked for the Birmingham Mail, which is the local newspaper in Birmingham. And that was covering Wolves. So covering Wolves as a reporter, sort of on the outside, if you like, going to the games, doing the interviews, press conferences and what have you. And then I think it was 2008, I then got a job at Wolves within the media office. So that was then working as part of what was then a very small team in the Championship with Mick McCarthy. And over sort of 9 years, I think I spent there, all the ups and downs, became head of media ultimately. And then probably 5 years ago now, I just decided to kind of take a different step really and new challenge and kind of go freelance and do a few other things within the media industry. But all through that, I've been really fortunate that I've carried on doing bits and bobs at Wolves. I do some interviewing on a match day with former players for them. I do some work with their foundation on a freelance basis, the Wolves Foundation, which does some fabulous work in the community. And then a few books with Dave Edwards and Carla Keamy. And now, as Johnny says, this latest project, which, it's been really good, I think, for the two of us to link up. We've kind of got similar love of Wolves, but different perceptions from different eras where we've been involved with the clubs in different ways. So, it's worked really well, and it's been a really exciting project to work on.
The book seems to dovetail perfectly with the growth of the EPL stateside, and particularly with the current era of the team and the tenure that we've enjoyed in the top flight. We've had much more exposure given that coverage from NBC. So it is really going to give that newer fan base that modern background to the club and have some familiarity with. So where was the genesis behind the book? Whose idea was it? Was it something that you did as friends, or were you sat next to each other in the press box and thought it'd be a good idea?
Well, we're actually approached by a publisher who kind of, I don't even know if we were first or second choice, to be honest. We might have been further down the pecking order, but we were kind of approached, and it was almost probably similar to what you've said about the growth in recent years. They wanted to do something around Fosun and the way the club had kind of exploded, onto the public consciousness and into the Premier League, as you say. But then I had a chat with Johnny. Obviously, we know each other very well. We've got a lot of similar opinions and experiences, and we kind of clocked the fact that this anniversary was coming up, 20 years since Wolves first got into the Premier League with the playoff final. So we kind of shaped the whole idea behind the book then of this 20-year period and the 3 different promotions and how things have changed every time. Wolves have got a little bit better at it every time they've achieved promotion up until this, these recent years, which have obviously been the most successful of, modern times. So it's kind of, we got approached, we then got together and put our heads together and came up with this plan And it did seem to work, perfectly well, and a really good time, good time to get the book out there to mark this 20th anniversary as well.
So, being legacy fans, and you certainly have strong links to the club, is it kind of a labor of love to commit to working on pieces like this, or does it make it easier?
I guess it is a labor of love, but that does make it easier. I think we're, as Paul touched on, we're probably cut from similar cloth. We're a similar age. We've gone through some bad times following Wolves. We probably share the same cynicism over some of the more sort of colourful aspects of the modern game. But we've also, we've grown up with the club in our own different ways. Paul's, from Wolverhampton. I'm a bit of an out of towner, but we've grown up, and the club has always been a sort of background to our existence. And I certainly feel we were a natural fit to do it as a partnership. I think it was too big an undertaking for either one of us to attempt alone, and I don't think we could have pulled it off. And it worked perfectly well. It was a lot of work, and it was over 2 years of collaboration and interviewing to get to the point we wanted to. But I think also we had similar ambitions for it. We sort of saw this as an opportunity to put down something over a 20-year period that had never been done before, and sort of explore it at a depth and a level that I'd never done before. And because we were both working on it, certainly from my perspective, I felt sort of spurred on by Paul and didn't want to let that half of the collaboration down. So we were constantly, we were trusting each other to get on with the bits that we delegated to each other, but we were also pushing each other with ideas for other things. And I think it worked really well.
I think, just to add to that, I think obviously because, we've worked with the club so closely in different ways for most of this 20-year period, I think what we did find, and probably what other people that have started reading the book have said to us, is we probably got more out of a lot of people than others might have done, purely because they know us and they trust us. Johnny's had interviews with Jeff Shee. Jeff doesn't do many interviews. I kind of worked with Jeff for a couple of years when I was still at Wolves, and he used to do a few bits and bobs for the press, but that's kind of, as his roles changed at Wolves, that doesn't happen very often. So, Jeff knew Johnny from few interviews and going on tour to China, as Johnny did a few years ago. So I think there was those sort of links. We both went to see Connor Cody at his house. Again, Connor knows both of us and trusts us. And I think everybody, from a former player and former manager, they're all quite really keen to get involved in the project when we approached them. I don't think, nobody said no. Everyone was really approachable and getting dates in the diaries to do it. So I think, again, that, I'm not saying it's because we're wonderful or anything, but just that longevity that we've covered the club and got to know people, I think they trusted us to tell their stories and to thread it all together, in the right way.
So we have a section that we call No Stupid Questions. Sometimes our listeners go a little bit off the rails, but we brought it up to them to ask you guys a couple questions. And Alex, I think they kept it pretty tame this week, huh?
I would say so compared to other weeks. It is the part of the show when you, the listener, can ask us anything you like, as long as it is in some form Wolves themed. So all of these today have come from the app formerly known as Twitter, or X, if you want to be correct, Twitter, I guess. Which our show handle is WLW Pod. The first one is a good one from the Charlotte Wolves Supporters Club, both in line with the book and also American themed. Who would be your Mount Rushmore of most influential people at Wolves, players or staff, front office, over the period that you have each covered them?
Well, I think first we also have to say, do you guys know when Americans are referring to the Mount Rushmore, what they're talking about?
Oh, yeah, we do that a lot.
Yeah, my American history is basic, but it has covered Mount Rushmore.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll let you start then, Johnny.
That's quite a good question, actually, and there are a lot of characters that would come under consideration for that. You could argue that George Mendes was the facilitator for everything that's happened in terms of bringing in the manager that changed everything and bringing in the players that changed everything. Of course, he wouldn't have been able to operate with Fosun not part of the club and had not taken it over. But I think he probably facilitated the greatest change. You could argue on the pitch, someone like Ruben Neves has become the sort of poster boy for the revolution, and far more symbolic than just his footballing ability. He carries the symbolism of achievement and breaking through a glass ceiling that Wolves were able to do. You could even say Kenny Jackett was the sort of the foundation of everything that's happened. I wouldn't go further back than Kenny, because I don't think there was that much sort of change that went on at the club. It was a steady build, but I probably ultimately going to have to go for Nuno, just for the playing revolution and what he brought to the club in terms of a coaching staff, a mentality, and an ethos that Wolves fans had never seen the like of before. He just took everything to a new level, and he expanded everyone's appreciation of what could be done by elite coaching and by elite strength and conditioning, and getting a group of players to perform at the highest level. And let's not forget, there was no team that Nuno's Wolves couldn't beat. That they lived and beat with the best on more than one occasion. So I will have to go with Nuno for that. Great question.
No, it is a really good question. I think on the football side, I have to agree with John. It's it's very difficult to argue against Nuno. It's obviously for the 20 years of the book, that's the most successful and sustained period. He was given the tools. George Mendes again had a part in that. He was given the tools to do it, but for his coaching skills and the way he built that team, with players that people thought wouldn't be able to hack it in the Championship, with players like Conor Cody and Matt Doherty, whose careers were revitalised. I think he's such a deep thinker, and obviously in the book there's a lot of that comes out with how people talk about Nuno. But just to possibly add a curveball into it from a bit earlier in the period, you talk about influence at Wolves, I'd probably throw in the chief executive, Jez Moxey, who is quite a divisive figure among supporters, but he was at Wolves for 16 years and probably about 13 years of this book. And he was pretty much, most of the time I was at Wolves when I was working for Jez. And I think his influence across the club was huge. Not necessarily always a popular one, and he'll admit he made mistakes. But I think for the people that worked for the club at that time, and I include kind of office staff, and then a lot of the managers, got on really well with Jez, and he ran a tight ship, but he was running it for the different owners in Sir Jack Hayward and Steve Morgan. He was kind of putting into practice what they wanted him to do. And he's very hard, but he was always very fair. And I think the characterisation of those early years of the book is that when he was involved in managerial appointments, when he got on well with managers, that's when Wolves were at their best. He worked closely with Dave Jones, he worked closely with Mick McCarthy. He was involved, I think, with Kevin Thelwell with the appointment of Kenny Jackett. And, those up until the explosion of Fosun and Nuno, which is obviously the most successful time, I think those three managers had the most success. And so I think he was a really key figure who kind of threaded everything together. He walked away, and probably most fans weren't too disappointed with that at the time, but I'd see him as a key figure. And again, I think what he and Steve Morgan did as well was they ran a tight ship, but that meant that when Fosun were looking at so many different football clubs to try and buy, Wolves was one that they were really keen on. And so I think, Steve and Jez, whatever happened when they were here, the ups and downs of their time at the club, I think the legacy is leaving it in a place where Fosun could come in and just, as we've seen, take it to a completely new level. So yeah, a bit of a curveball maybe for Mount Rushmore there.
But to add to that, Paul, I'd also say that you could argue that if someone of Jez Moxey's expertise held a position at the club now at boardroom level, we wouldn't have seen possibly a lot of the waste that we have seen under Fosun. Fosun, in my opinion, have been brilliant owners for the club, but there has been an awful lot of waste and a lot of churn during that period, which may have been avoided had a sort of a CEO of Jez's expertise been in. Wolves probably only saw Jez when he was trying to cut cloth according to what he was given to operate with. It would have been interesting to see how successful he could have made at the club now.
All right. Next question via Twitter. America, also known for how expansive we are from a geographic perspective. So with the number of former players that have come here to play, friend of show Todd DeWitt asks, which one of them would you want to go on a cross-country road trip with? It's a long trip.
There's quite a lot of Wolves players who've played in America. I'm a keen golfer. I've never played golf in America, but there are more courses than you can shake a stick at, and it would be a great road trip going around. So I'd want a golfer with me. I'm also half Irish as well, so someone with a bit of Irish heritage. So I'm going to pick two, if I may, who are very good golfers: Kevin Doyle and Robbie Keane. I'd love to come to golf and get a 4-ball going with my favorite golfer, Jordan Spieth. I'd love to come to America and play in that 4-ball.
So if Jordan's listening, there's the
Yeah.
Well, he's Leeds United now, isn't he? Unfortunately,
course,
so, yeah, that ship sailed.
you might bump into him. You never know. But yeah, no, it's a really good question. I think there's been all brilliant questions. To be honest, it makes us think. I'd probably go back a bit earlier, just to sort of just to be different to Johnny's answers. And I think so. Obviously, there's a lot of Wolves players that came over to America in the early years, wasn't there? With Steve Daly, Phil Parkes, Kenny Hibbert, Alan Hinton, and a lot of others. So I'd probably go for, especially on a long trip, Steve Daly and Phil Parkes, who are an incredible double act, just really good people, but absolutely hilarious. Steve Daly's won after dinner speaking awards. Phil Parkes, known as Lofty, who played for Vancouver Whitecaps. He's just hilarious. And the two of them together are brilliant. And Steve tells this story. I think they're on a tour to Australia at one point. I'm not sure when this was, but they all went out, had a night drinking, as the players often get to do on pre-season. And they're in some bar somewhere in Australia, and they had to move on somewhere else, which I think was a 50-minute taxi ride away. So they all went, the whole squad left. And when they got there, they suddenly realised that Lofty wasn't with them. They'd left him behind, which, wasn't great. So they went back. So by this time, you've got an hour and a half, 2 hours. Lofty was still sat there. He hadn't moved. He was still drinking, I think, with some locals. And literally, you just sort of, I think he thought they'd been to the toilet or something. It was just one of those situations where he had no idea what was going on. So I do think there'd be some interesting escapades. It'd never be dull. And Dales and Lofty would be hilarious travel companions, I think, to go across America with.
That's great.
Definitely. Sounds like it would be memorable. All right, next up, Kaza asks, the Fosun takeover made us believe that we could achieve things. Now it seems we have to settle for mediocrity. Would you rather Wolves be a mid-table Premier League team achieving nothing, or be in the Championship with hope for something, maybe a title?
To be honest, I'd have to say a mid-table Premier League team achieving nothing, because as long as you're in the Premier League, you've always got a chance of picking up a trophy. Whereas I think lower down than that, the gap's just too big. And Paul, I'm sure, have his own memories. The promotions were brilliant, and they're a big part of our favourite years of supporting Wolves. But I think all you get after a promotion is a place in the Premier League and nothing more than that. Whereas if you're in the Premier League on a consistent basis, even if it looks like ambition is being curtailed as it has at the moment, there's always a chance of a cup in there, and there's always a chance of building. There's always a chance you're a more attractive proposition for a takeover from somebody else. So I'm afraid I'd have to go with bumbling along in mid-table in the Premier League.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. I think, the start of our book in 2003 is finally Wolves making it after 19 years, 19 godforsaken years for a large part in the Championship, and the toaster banner at the playoff final. Johnny spoke to the originator of that at the start of the book about, it took 19 years to get there, and we've been in and out since, but I think it's the only place to be, really. And I take the point, actually, that those, and the Johnny's mentioned it as well, how great those promotions were under Nuno and under Mick and under Dave Jones in the time period. But I think, definitely the Premier League's the place to be. And obviously, after that initial success under Nuno, things seem to have stagnated a little bit. But football comes in cycles, and you don't know what's going to happen. Wolves could spend a load of money again next summer once regulations have eased, if you like, and if Fosun decide to go for it again. You look at clubs in the Premier League like Brighton, who have achieved some incredible results by building over a number of years, based on fantastic recruitment, fantastic coaching. No reason why Wolves, in with a fair crack of the whip, and if things go in the right direction, couldn't sort of aim to do that. But definitely Premier League, even if it's mid-table, and the cup runs. Got to the FA Cup semi-final under Nuno, who's again with a decent draw. There's no reason why you can't do that in the FA Cup or the League Cup, and that just keeps the season bubbling along. But yeah, Premier League's the only place to be for me.
Yeah. We had another one from the Charlotte Wolves, and Johnny, you may have touched on this a little bit, talking about the difference between previous owners and Fosun today. But how do you feel the club culture has shifted from 2003 to today, and do you feel that overall that it's an improvement?
Yeah, it was quite a parochial outfit back in 2003. It had a local benefactor as an owner. Football clubs throughout the vast majority of the sort of 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s were locally owned. And Wolves had one of those. He had money, but he didn't have any football expertise. And Sir Jack Hayward certainly meant well, but he couldn't sort of harness much growth at the club during his time here. He redeveloped the ground, which was great. But the club never really thought big under his ownership. They didn't necessarily get all the right people in, and they didn't look to grow it. During the middle period of the book, Steve Morgan had a bit more football expertise and perhaps saw the benefit of academies and the benefit of trying to grow the club within the community. And then by the end, Fosun, while they have ignored large aspects of sort of physical growth of the club, they brought in expertise in terms of coaches and in terms of quality of players. So it's very much gone from a sort of what in the olden days would have been a traditionally run club by a local businessman to a club that has more of a global feel to it now. They think big. They don't always pull it off. They failed to tour America and South Korea in the last 2 years. They make mistakes still, and there is still areas of expertise that they need to cover, but they operate with the biggest agencies in world football. They get the sort of big name players. They until a month or two ago, they could attract big name managers as well. So I think the club has changed beyond recognition in that sense, and that has been a cultural shift. I'd like it. It's a shame what's happened in the last couple of months, because I'm not saying Fosun have undone a lot of the good work they've done, but there is a little sense of waste, and maybe that they're not realizing the potential of their investments at the moment.
Yeah, I'd agree again. Probably Johnny's nailed that. I think I'd agree with all that. And again, the book reflects those differences in owners with Sir Jack. I used to call them the turnstiles, very much a local ethos. Built the ground up. Steve Morgan took that on a little bit, but Steve as a builder had a professional interest. I mean, I didn't even realise till we interviewed him for the book about all the land that he bought around the ground and how he's protected Molineux, really. There was leases that were going to run out, and obviously the council have been very supportive, but you never quite know what the future would hold. So again, his expertise kind of just carried things forward a little bit, and then up until Fosun, who, as Johnny says, the global aspirations, the global reach, the way they've branched out into different aspects, not just of football, but entertainment to grow the brand. I mean, that's been a complete culture shift and off the scale from the start of this period. And obviously with that has come the incredible, quality of players that we've seen that previous managers' regimes, they were never able to get them to Wolves, obviously for financial reasons for the large part. So it's been a huge shift. And I think, do you feel this is an improvement, which is again a really good question, because obviously the main reason, if you're looking at football and success, then it definitely has been an improvement. And I think Wolves 6 years in the Premier League now, which we haven't come close to, for a long time before that. Community, interest in the community and the local side, probably from a Fosun point of view, that's not on our list of priorities so much. But what you have there, and I've mentioned I do a little bit of work for the Wolves Foundation, they do some incredible work within the community. So they kind of cover off that aspect, the sort of stuff that Steve Morgan and Jack Hayward were really keen on. So there is still, it's all about finding that balance, I think, isn't it, between the global aspirations, attracting new fans, but also making sure that the fans that are local still feel that it's their club. And I think for the most part, they've absolutely achieved that. And what happens now is obviously with the fans now, the expectation levels have increased so much that just surviving in the Premier League almost isn't good enough, and that's the next challenge, I think, for the coach and for the owners and the staff. A few years ago, if you'd said to Wolves fans you got 6 years in the Premier League and a cup semi-final, a Europa League run, they'd have absolutely snapped your hands off. Whereas now, it just feels like expectations have risen so much that fans want more and more, and there's nothing wrong with that. Wolves have sat in the doldrums for many, many years, so let's just hope that things get back on a forward momentum again very soon.
All right. And finally, Steve Young asks, how can we get a hold of a copy of the book?
Well, Paul, you might know better than me. Does Amazon reach America?
Well, I was going to ask you guys. We did ask our pitch publishers who published the book, and I believe, is it Danny, Baltimore Wolves?
Yes.
And he said that he thinks it's on the US Amazon as well as on Barnes and Noble website, which also includes digital versions. So hopefully they can find it that way.
I'm looking now. Yes, you can purchase the hardcover for $26.02 with a $3.99 delivery charge and get it in a week and a half. Or you can buy it on your Kindle for $10.99 and it's available instantly.
Wow. There you go. Hot off the press, that information. But yeah, no. So yeah, hopefully if anyone's out there wanting to buy it, I mean, it's I think it's a great kind of, as Johnny said earlier, we both said we've been through this roller coaster ride for many years as Wolves fans. The last 20 years has been particularly up and down. So fans who've lived through it, hopefully they want to live through it again. Fans that might be a bit newer to Wolves, it's hopefully a really good, good book to really gain a knowledge of what Wolves is and the players and the managers that have made the club what it is today.
But Paul, that's not the only way our listeners can get a copy of the book, is it?
Correct, Josh. For one lucky listener, they will have their own copy sent straight from the publishers, thanks to Paul and Johnny's generosity. So all you have to do to enter this free giveaway is send us your Wolves Mount Rushmore from the time period that the book covers. Again, it could be made up of your favourite players, coaches, front office, the previous version of the Wolfie mascot, whoever you choose. And there's a number of ways you can do it. You can tweet them or X them or whatever, again, to @WLWpod. You can send us them to our Facebook, which is /Whole Lot of Wolves, all one word. You can email them, hello@wholelotofwolves.com. Or you could submit them with a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. So it'll be one entry per listener, open to residents of North America only, and we'll pick the winner live randomly during next week's podcast recording.
Guys, thank you so much for appearing on the podcast. Man, it's been an honor. I can't wait to read the book. I'm sure Alex and Paul feel the same way. Going to learn a lot about Wolves, especially for newer fans like me that didn't really start following the club until this last promotion. So thank you so much for taking the time to come on today.
No problem.
Thanks for having us, Josh. Appreciate it. It's great to chat with you all.
Definitely. Hopefully catch up when you get over for a game as well at some point.
That's right. I'll DM you, Paul, and let you know when I'm coming out in March. So
good stuff.
Yeah, I can already tell I am going to be so wasted because there's so many people that are like, oh, got to meet up for a beer. I'm like, oh.
Been an enjoyable trip then.
Yes, absolutely.
Brilliant.
Thanks, guys.
Cheers, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you.
So, Paul, we're facing Luton Town coming up on Saturday. Luton Town.
Josh.
Did you do that on purpose?
I did do that on purpose. So we're facing Luton Town Saturday, 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Central. Paul, do we have an opposition? I mean, are there Luton Town fans here in the U.S.?
It doesn't appear so. I scoured the country for an American-based Luton Town fan. Unable to find one. So if any listeners happen to know of one, a long-distant cousin or what have you for the return fixture, then be sure to get in touch and let us know. But with all that, I thought I'd actually turn the tables and ask you two, firstly, what you know about Luton Town, and then maybe I'll provide some of the historical background from when I was growing up.
Well, Luton Town, which in German, of course, means a whale's vagina, is not a city, it's a town. Founded by Sir Luton the Third. Sir Luton the Third. Any of that right?
I don't think it's what Wikipedia says. It's a little different, I think.
Alex, maybe you're a little better than me.
I think I know two things. One, it's been well documented. You, as the visiting fans, you basically have to go through people's backyards to get to the stand. I know that, and I know that I don't believe that's changed, even with whatever renovations they had to do. And then only because I have a friend who is from England and knows a lot about clubs like these. Every time I mention Luton Town, he's like, the Hatters. Apparently Luton Town is like the hat making capital of the country, and that is why they are called the Hatters. So that's my one nugget of Luton trivia that I did actually learn, and I learned that maybe like a week ago.
And here I thought the only person that made hats was little kids over in the Far East.
We do not condone child labor here.
We do not.
A whole lot of
we
wolves.
do not. I'm glad to hear that there is, in fact, other people that create hats.
So you mentioned that their stadium, and it was the meme, I think, on their when they got promotion to the playoffs. It's Kenilworth Road, and you enter through the turnstiles, and it backs onto those people's terraced houses, and it had that positioned as like a Premier League stadium that's got a capacity of like 10,100, and then it was pictured next to a Texas high school stadium, I think in Dallas, which was
it had to be Allen High School.
Yeah, it was like £40 million just for that stadium for a high school football team that seats 60,000. It was just kind of, what's going on? The biggest league in the world versus Texas high school football. So yeah, that's one that stands out for me. But just going back to some history. So like Luton, when I was growing up, talking mid-80s, they were always not lowly placed, but top flight team. So in the first division, what it was known as before the Premier League kicked in and all of its wealth became a thing. They were always like in the league, lowly ranked. Occasionally they'd I remember 98, I think it was, they won what is now the Carabao Cup. They beat Arsenal at the time, so it was very much like a David beating Goliath type fixture that they won. But back to their stadium, what they were most infamous for at the time was they were only one of the 3 pitches in the top league that at the time played on turf before it was outlawed. So that was always a really weird dynamic, that you get these opposition teams that were coming into play that they were used to playing on grass. So they didn't know how to handle the surface. The ball would like bounce up massively. So it was a real leveler for those teams that played with a plastic artificial field versus those used to playing on grass. So they're a southern team in England. So Hertfordshire is the county where they're based. So it's not really London. It's like the farthest stretches north of London. sometimes if you search for like London flights, Luton's included as like a local regionalized London airport, but it's not attached to the capital. That place is their main rivalry with Watford, who are like across the other way. So that's who their rivals are. They went all the way down. If you watch the Wrexham show, they went all the way down to the league that Wrexham were in, non-league, semi-professional, and have come all the way back and done that really in a relatively short period of time. During that period, in fact, when they were a non-league team, we went and played there in the FA Cup in 2013, and that was the final straw in Stolas de Bakken's tenure because we lost 1-0, and that was when we double dipped down to League One. So after being in the EPL the year before, so we've always got that at the back of our minds as well. It's like the last time we went there, it wasn't very pretty either. So notable players we've recent memory we've signed from Kevin Foley, who was a mainstay right back during the Mick McCarthy Premier League years, and obviously Dave Edwards, who was during that stayed with the club when we went down, came back up and featured briefly right at the start of Nuno's tenure as well. So on the opposition, obviously we've got the coach as well, Rob Edwards, strong ties to us on the playing side and coaching side, and Ryan Giles making that move in the summer as well. So there's a few links between Luton and Wolves that we'll be looking out for on Saturday as well.
I wonder if it helps the property value to have the stadium right there or not.
Yeah, I was thinking the same. Is it an amenity or a total downfall?
Yeah. Like, is it one of those where you post the house and it's a good $200,000 more than it should be, and you're like, why is this? And then you're like, oh, it's because I can walk upstairs and watch the entire match.
Yeah, it's more of a case so that you got to open your bathroom window to peek out and watch the match. So possibly
imagine watching a Premier League game, Alex, while you're sitting on the John.
I think didn't West Ham fans start a chant about seeing someone in the bath because I saw on Twitter they actually could like see into someone's, like, not the whole thing, but they could see somebody's head in the shower. Like, it's just hilarious.
That's somebody that's doing that on purpose too, let's be honest.
Yeah, maybe.
Gotta be an exhibitionist. So do we think that this is going to be a stumbling block, Paul?
It's one of those ones where Luton Town, in theory, should get 0 points from this whole Premier League adventure, but you just know they're going to do a Huddersfield Town and get 6, and those 6 are going to come from playing us.
Wolves mentality right there. Alex, what do you think? Is this a game we should be worried about?
To a degree, I think, because I think if you're Luton, they are looking at this as one of their winnable home games. And like, they got to have a signature home win on that field in the Premier League, right? So what better time than against a Wolves team that is defensively disorganized and kind of down in the dumps right now. So I think from their perspective, yeah, they're probably looking at it that way. And I think that could give them like, a bit of a pep. Like I would not be shocked to see them come out and score early, which really worries me because I feel like this team could kind of get in its own head a little bit when they concede. The Wolves at it, and I know they haven't really conceded in first halves this season. They've been really solid, but just the body language, like when that first goal went in, Kilman seems so devastated. It's the opposite of like the Cody, like, okay, let's keep at it kind of thing. It's more like the here we go again kind of.
I mean,
thing.
I like Kilman a lot, but this is part of the problem with him as captain is And I do feel like that's why things kind of spiral, is because we don't have that Cody. We don't have that Neves to go, hey, it's not over yet. Like, buck up, let's go. Instead, Hillman just kind of drags his head. And if that's what your captain's doing, that's tough.
It's hard to expect that to come from attacking players because they're all down in the doldrums about their lack of finishing chances that really should be finished. Like you saw Cunha on the bench at the end of that game, just such disappointment on his face. And I'm sure all he's thinking about is that ball hitting him in the thigh when he leapt for it to head it. I mean,
I should use the lemon to wipe the thigh, I guess, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
So, Paul, how do you think they're going to line up now? Is it going to be a similar lineup, especially with now as we're integrating more of the players?
I think so. I think based on Saturday's first half, he might be inclined to try and run it back and see if we can't score early again and build on that. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the same starting 11. The other one I'm thinking that might happen on Saturday is that it turns into Kalajnic's first start. But if that's going to happen, I think that's going to dictate that he needs a forward partner playing off of him, and then that may be too much disruption to the shape of the rest of the team in order for that to happen. Now, that could be, that could be Neto, but does that take away from where Neto's delivered so far this season, being out on the left? It could be Wang to get him more touches in and around closer to the box, where he could be better suited and have more impact on the game. Does that mean that Bellegarde is pushed out more to the right hand side, like those positions that Nunes used to take up last season? So, I don't know. I could see it going a few different ways, and that's why I go back to my point about hopefully O'Neill really starts to fashion this team formation shape in his own thinking, and we start to see some positives come from that.
Well, guys, let's look at the standings for the Premier League, or for our prediction league. Stu got 1 point for the guests. The guests are in second place with 7. Paul, you tied me. We're both at the bottom of the table because you had 4-1 Liverpool, so you got a point. Alex also got a point, and he remains in first with 9 points. Nice going, Alex.
Yeah.
We
Thanks.
did have one submission I saw who got nailed the 3-1
Yes,
loss
there were
as well,
actually 2 that nailed
Two.
it right on. Yeah, Steve Young in our listeners one. Steve Young and Todd DeWitt each had 3-1 Liverpool. Dan Wilkes had 2-0 Liverpool. So Steve Young has taken the lead with 7 points, followed by Dan Wilkes and then Todd DeWitt. So those 3 guys doing pretty good. Steve has actually gotten 2 results right this year, so pretty solid. All right, Paul, or Alex, I'll start with you. What is your prediction for this game?
Okay. I already said I think Luton will score, unfortunately. However, I do think scoring multiple goals for Wolves is in the cards, so I'm going to say 2-1 Wolves.
2-1 Wolves. Okay. Paul?
I should really back that 6-point prediction, which means I've got to predict a loss, but I just can't do it. Can't I have some happiness and enjoyment in my life just for like one weekend, that we actually turn up and hammer someone and it's all rosy for 7 days before Man City turn up? So let's just go down that route and say Luton Town 1, Wolverhampton Wanderers 4.
Ooh. 4-1. Wow. Who's scoring all 4 of those goals, Paul?
No fucking idea.
Somebody's shoulders.
So someone's shoulder with two.
Head, shoulders, knees, and
Wang will
toes.
get
Knees and
one
toes.
because he's the only one who scores.
Yeah. I'm gonna go 2-2 draw. And then I'm gonna stay off Twitter the rest of the day.
Oh, that hurts.
Because it's gonna be something stupid. Watch. It's gonna be like we're gonna score in like the 87th minute and think we got it, and then like in the 95th minute they're gonna score a equalizer on something stupid. Oh, God, I'm becoming you, Paul.
It's spreading.
What a miserable man. This was an awful weekend for me for sports. It's sometimes it's best to just not turn on the TV and stay in bed. Okay, Paul, time to wrap it up.
Yep, we're going to be back quickly next week to preview that League Cup game, fourth round, traveling to Ipswich away. And it certainly doesn't get any easier the following weekend when Manchester City come to town. So thanks for Alex producing. Thanks to Danny on the socials. Thanks to our guests, Paul and Johnny. And in the meantime, I'm sure this win against Luton, it will make the world and the league seem like a brighter place. So let's keep the faith and up the mighty Wolves.